Okay, we're back. Sorry for the problems. The internet cut out
No,
in all of the power was out in Europe. The lights went out.
that's why the lights were going funny. You see, it's all better writing here than in the Need for Speed novel, is what I'm saying.
Okay, so Dino hits women. We figured that out.
Yep.
That was the last thing. We're in the next chapter now. And Dino's racist, apparently.
Dino is all the villains.
But badly.
Yeah.
The sun was just setting when the Mustang roared across San Francisco's Bay Bridge. Once the supercar was on the hilly streets of the city, it began passing streetcars and going around tight turns with speed and ease. Night had fallen by the time Toby pulled up in front of the Intercontinental Hotel. He parked in a restricted loading zone. "You're 23 minutes late," Julia reminded him. "Hurry." Toby leapt out of the car and headed for the door. The lobby was brightly lit, glittering, and crowded. Toby walked the length of it, anxious to find the room where Monarch said the details the De Leon could be found. The race was going to be held the next morning. If Toby was going to participate, despite the dismal condition of the Mustang, he had to find the right room first. With his mind totally concentrated on the hotel room numbers, he turned a corner and ran right into Dino. The two rivals stopped in their tracks, stunned that they could meet this way. They glared at each other with pure hate and distrust. At that moment, Toby would have liked nothing better than to pummel Dino to death. Which, he's done. Are you laughing at the alliteration?
Pummel Dino to death! I'm laughing at how just nakedly that is about Toby's just pure anger at all times. It's pretty great.
"Surprised you made it, Marshall," Dino said finally, the smarmy part of him taking over. Impressed, actually. The situation was very tense. Dino could tell by the look in Toby's eyes that a physical attack was probably seconds away. He spoke again. "So what's going on inside the head of yours, Toby?" "That you never went back for him," Toby answered immediately. "That you left Pete back there to die." Toby just smiled. "But I wasn't there," Dino said, goading him. "Remember? But I was there to comfort Anita at poor Pete's funeral and give her a shoulder to cry on, and much more after that. She's such a sweet, simple girl, but you already know that." Toby lost it. He grabbed Dino and slammed him hard against the wall. But, though Dino was startled at first, he recovered quickly and just smiled back at Toby. He had the eyes of a psychopath. "You really want to do this here, Marshall?" he asked the enraged Toby, looking around at the crowded hotel. "Remember, one of us is on parole, but it's your move." Toby thought for a long moment. A fight here would bring the cops, and the cops would bring him to jail. If that happened, everything he had gone through in the past 2 days, and everything he'd been planning for the past 2 years, would have all been for nothing. So he let his cooler side prevail. He stepped away from Dino. "We'll settle this behind the wheel," he told him. Dino just scoffed back at him. "Believe me, I'm not the slightest bit worried about you behind the wheel," he said. "Really?" Toby asked him. "Then why did you put that bounty on me?" Dino's features fell. He was busted and he knew it, but he continued to taunt Toby. "Tomorrow's going to be fun," he said. "I'm glad I'm racing. I'm really looking forward to it." "Is losing fun for you, Dino?" Toby spit back at him. "Well, let me tell you something, brother." The brother is my addition, but man, we're hanging upside down tomorrow. I'm not coming back for you. Dino turned very dark. "Watch yourself, Toby," he said. "I'm serious." "I'll see you tomorrow, you pussy," Toby told him. Dino smiled. "I wouldn't be too sure of that," he said. With that, Dino slowly backed down the hallway. Toby watched his every move until he was finally out of sight. Toby came back to the Mustang a few minutes later. He was seething. He pulled away from the hotel with a screech of tires and a burst of power. Julia guessed correctly as to what had happened to him. "You ran into him, didn't you?" she asked him. "That monster Dino." Toby didn't reply. He didn't have to. "Listen," she went on. "Just forget him. Let it go." "That won't be easy," Toby replied. "Do you get the information you needed on the race?" she asked. He nodded. "Yes, even though I was late." Then you just need to get out of this car," she said. "Take a hot shower, eat a good meal, and get some rest." She hit her iPad. "I'm going to book you a nice hotel room and..." Toby suddenly interrupted her. "You should stay with me," he said. There was a long pause. For the first time on the trip, Julia was authentically speechless.
But except, what?
What?
I swear there have been many other times when she was authentically speechless.
Yeah, but she was lying about being speechless. Not authentic. She's a disingenuous, speechless woman.
I want to go back a little bit and just say how funny it is that when he went into the hotel, all like really gruff and stuff, he was actually thinking, okay, is it room 17, room 16? We never got a shot of him in the car looking over all the numbers for the rooms.
It would be safer that way, he added. She looked back at him, and Toby smiled back. Then suddenly, bam! An instant later, everything inside the Mustang was upside down, turning in wrenching slow motion. The car's airbags deployed, and Julia was slammed hard by one inflating from the passenger side door. Toby was yanked violently sideways, smashing his head on the driver's side window. The Mustang was not only airborne, it was flipping over and over in midair. It seemed to take forever, but eventually it landed hard on the roof with a crash. There was no airbags in that Mustang in the movie.
There was not. No.
They'd been T-boned by a huge truck. Now that truck had stopped. Inside was Big Al, Dino's #1 goon. He admired his handiwork, then sped away down a side street. Toby regained consciousness just to find himself upside down. He looked over at Julie and felt a crushing sensation in his chest. She was seriously hurt. He reached down and hit the iPad. He called the Beast. "We've been hit," he just barely managed to say. "Get here now." "We're on it," Joe Peck replied urgently. Toby unclipped his seatbelt and fell to the roof. That's when Julie opened her eyes. "Are you okay?" Toby asked her. "Get out," she told him weakly. "Go, before the police come." Toby kicked the door open, climbed out, and disappeared. Julia groaned softly, teetering on the brink of unconsciousness. Suddenly, her door was ripped open. A hand reached in, unclipped her seatbelt, and gently took her out of the car. This kind of framing, gimmick doesn't work in a book.
Which framing
Like,
gimmick?
it's a movie, kinda. It's still super cheesy, but at least it works. None of this works in a book.
What do you mean?
She's like, go, and then he runs away, and then the door on her side opens.
Yes.
To rescue her. Doesn't work in a book.
Yeah, no. I mean, it didn't really work in the movie.
No, it didn't. But, as a construction, it seems so obvious and gross in a book. You're already in, this weird, omniscient view anyway. Narrowing it just to pay off this one point of, oh, he ran away. Oh, no, he's back, is stupid.
Yeah, but what else is he going to do? Come up with something, unique and original?
Ugh. Suddenly, her door was ripped open, a hand reached in, unclipped her seatbelt, and gently took her out of the car. It was Toby. He carried her to the middle of the street, leaving the carnage of the crash behind him. The Beast appeared a second later, roaring to help them. Finn immediately jumped out, with Toby's help, carefully placed Julia in the rear truck seat. They were lucky to find a hospital quickly. The Beast screeched up to the emergency room entrance, and Finn jumped out. He grabbed an EMT crew, just returning from a drop-off. Finn found a gurney, and Toby carried Julia and put her on it with the help of a female EMT. "Finn, please stay with her," Toby said. "What's her name?" the female EMT asked. "Did she ever lose consciousness?" "Her name is Julia," Toby replied, "and she never loses consciousness. Ever. Trust me. Take good care of her." What? "Her name is Julia," Toby replied, "and she never loses consciousness.
Is that
period. Ever.
Is that
period. Trust me. Period."
Is that a dig at how she talks too much again?
I don't know. It's amazingly stupid, though. I just thought that's how he wants to sell her as being tough.
Maybe. I like this Batman Toby that now exists.
Julia smiled weakly and fought back tears. Toby watched as Finn's the female EMT wheeled her inside the hospital. Then he turned back to the night. Now the gloves are off. That's a line! A full paragraph. Then he turned back to the night. Good job. Thank you, Batman Toby.
I don't even have anything to say. That's too good. What did the knight say?
Nothing, but the gloves were off.
Because prior to this, the gloves had been so on.
Mm-hmm. You know, when he murdered that man with a doorknob in prison.
Shit, oh my god, you're right. Man, yes. When he went from being terrified of prison to being the king murderer of prison in 5 minutes.
The famed bridge was brightly lit up as usual, its reflection glowing off the water of San Francisco Bay. Toby was leaning on the bridge's railing, staring into the turbulent waters below. The Beast was parked nearby, engine idling. Joe Peck was inside, waiting patiently. A taxicab pulled up beside him. Anita stepped out. Joe watched silently as she walked towards Toby. He just shook his head and whispered, "Toby, dude, sometimes I wonder if you got a death wish, bro." Anita and Toby greeted each other in near silence. She leaned against the railing next to him. Heavy makeup covered her recently acquired black eye. You must be exhausted after what you've been through, she said to him. I'm okay, he replied. I know I probably look tired too, she said. Toby smiled awkwardly. So did she. He began to say something about her black eye, but she cut him off. How are the guys? She asked him instead. I still miss them. Well, Betty's in jail, Toby told her, and Julia's in the hospital. I'm so sorry, Toby, she said, their eyes locked. Why didn't you just leave him? Toby asked her. He's a really bad guy. I know, she said. Then she held up her engagement ring. And I just did, she added. Anita spotted Toby's tattoo. She took his hand and turned it over so she could see it clearly. Pete. I know that Dino was there the night that my brother died, Anita said after a while. Yeah, he was, Toby replied with a nod. I wish I could give you back those years, Anita told him, the time you spent in prison. She moved closer to him, but he took a step back. I don't want the years back, he told her. I just want that one moment back. Just one fucking moment. It's not your fault, Anita told him. Nothing would have kept Pete from getting in that car. Nothing. Dino just shook his head. Dino, he said bitterly. Dino could have just kept it between me and him. He's a scam artist, Nita said. The whole thing was a con. It started with the Mustang, then it turned into a shell game, moving this car here, that car there, but it went bust, and now he's broke. He owns a lot of money to a lot of people. Dangerous people. He's desperate. He needs to win De Leon or he'll lose everything. I lost you, my mother, my father, Pete, the shop, Toby said. I lost everything. But Dino's willing to die, Anita said gravely. So am I, Toby told her. Anita studied him closely. She had no doubt he was serious. I need a car, he told her starkly. The Mustang is wrecked. Anita thought a moment. Then she began searching through her bag. She finally found a business card and handed it to Toby. It's a warehouse, she told him. That's the combination to the lock. I've never been inside, but I know Dino keeps some cars there. Toby studied the combination numbers on the business card. But please, Toby, she warned him, don't get too close to him. He's capable of anything. Toby smiled darkly. So am I, he said. 24. How's it going?
It's really good right now. I like how fast he's tearing through all these scenes. Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah.
Boom.
It was now the dead of night. The junkyard was dark, full of shadows, and hopefully deserted. Toby and Joe Peck drove through the place in the Beast. Both were highly on guard. Boy, this feels like a setup, Joe said ominously. Toby didn't reply. Up ahead, they saw a dusty shed with a stack of crushed cars blocking its roll-up door. Whoa, hey, wait, my Twitch crashed.
Twitch crashed?
Why did that happen? Mine did. Oh, must have clicked something. An advertisement popped up, that's why. Never mind. I thought the stream had gone down. I was like, what? Wait,
nope, all fine, over here.
A shed full of shit. They stopped the Beast and got out. Joe's flashlight found the shed's lock. Toby immediately dialed in the combination of numbers from the business card. The lock clicked open on the first try. He rolled up the door and the flashlight revealed what was inside. 3 cars hidden under blankets. Toby and Joe moved some old junk parts and boxes off the first one. The dust became thick as they pulled the blanket off. Underneath was a 1975 Ferrari Dino. They were both awestruck. This was a fantastic, extremely expensive car. Joe Peck blurted out, "Wow, Dino's got a Dino." But Toby had already moved
out.
the second car. He pulled off its blanket. Beneath was a brand new Porsche. That's a 911 GT, Toby exclaimed. Big bucks for that too. They made their way to the last car. They both pulled the blanket off together. Beneath was the Koenigsegg. Toby and Joe both froze in place. For them, this was like seeing a ghost. Damn, Joe breathed. Could this be the car? Toby knelt down and ran his hand over some of the scratches on the front bumper. They matched up with where the scratches would be if this car had forced another off the road. At that moment, Toby was convinced this was the same car that had caused their friend's death. Seeing it and knowing this was overwhelming for both Toby and Joe. Why didn't he just destroy it? Joe Peck asked. Torch it. Do something to it. Here's all the evidence right here. Toby shook his head. He had no idea. Maybe it's hard to set $2 million on fire, he asked. Or maybe he just thought he'd never get caught. Joe smiled darkly. Well, he said, he was wrong there. A few minutes later, the silence of the junkyard was split by the roar of a hypercar coming to life. It sounded like a lion, warning anyone within earshot not to come any closer. The Beast began pulling up the stack of junk cars that had been blocking the shed's doors. They moved like they were toys, opening a way through the wrecks. Suddenly, the Koenigsegg rolled out, Toby behind the wheel. He gave the accelerator a few short stabs, and then sped off into the night. Minutes later, Toby was roaring through the streets of San Francisco, strapped to the powerful, ultra-expensive Koenigsegg sports car. He rocketed through a red light without even noticing it. His thoughts were a million miles away. Just 3 days before, he was in prison serving the last hours of a sentence for killing one of his best friends, a crime he did not commit. Now he was driving the same car the real killer had used to end Little Pete's life, and with it, he intended on teaching the real killer a lesson or die trying. I like that they just summarized the plot for us in a paragraph, as if we hadn't read the rest of this book.
Yeah, well, you gotta hit that word count somehow.
But then he saw the red light still glowing in his rearview mirror and immediately slowed down. It would not be good to be stopped by the cops at this point. That would send all his best laid plans right down the drain. These are not street legal cars. He could get stopped anyway.
Yep. Yeah, the whole point of that car is that it's illegal in America, right?
Yep.
God. Where's the internal consistency?
He woke himself up mentally and started concentrating on what he was doing and on what had to be done. Minutes later, he pulled into a parking lot of the hospital. Climbing out of the Koenigsegg, he pulled his hoodie over his head and snuck in through a side entrance. He quickly found the right corridor and saw Finn standing outside a hospital room. Finn put his finger to his lips, silently telling Toby to stay quiet. The two friends pound-hugged, and then Toby went into Julia's room. Julia was lying on the bed, hooked up to a gaggle of tubes, wires, and monitors. She was asleep, but as soon as Toby got close to her bed, she opened her eyes. "How are you feeling?" he asked her quietly.
Great. This is already going well.
What, the Batman voice?
Yeah.
Well, it's not going to stop, so...
No, it's not.
"Beat up," she replied, "but I'm fine." "You're not the girl I thought you were," Toby told her sincerely. She smiled a little. "You find out a lot about a person after they've been hit by a truck," she said. Toby smiled and Julia closed her eyes. "What are you going to do tomorrow?" she asked him sleepily. "I'm going to show up on time," he replied. "Ready to go." "But you can't race in the De Leon," she said. "In what car?" "I found a car," Toby told her cryptically. "And do I want to know where you got it?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, you don't." "Is it fast at least?" she asked him. "Fast enough," he replied. Julia smiled, but she was definitely nodding off. "I'll let you sleep," Toby told her. "I don't want to sleep," she replied. "Not while you're here. I just spent 48 hours straight trying to get you to talk because you're... But she was quickly fading and couldn't get the words out. "I'm what?" Toby suddenly wanted to know, but she seemed to go back to sleep. Toby quietly stepped away from the bed. "You're Mr. Strong and Silent," she finally said, though more asleep than awake. She smiled, eyes still closed. Toby stepped back closer to the bed and leaned in close to her. She opened her eyes. "How about you be Miss Strong and Silent for a change?" he said. Then he kissed her. Ellipses, then he kissed her. Ellipses.
Oh, great. Okay.
"Rest, okay," he told her. "Okay," she replied. Toby headed for the door, but then he heard her whisper. "Toby," she said. He turned back to her one last time. "Yes," he said. She thought for a moment, then said, "Do it for Pete." Part 7. You ready?
No, I'm not. No.
Good. 25. It was early morning, and somewhere up in the mountains of Mendocino, a starting line had been established. 36 people had gathered there, an exclusive club, each one invited personally by Monarch. They'd all been sworn to secrecy. This was how the De Leon was run. The most exciting street racing event in the world had more layers of security than a CIA black op.
I doubt that. Very highly.
I mean, it's on the internet. I mean, come on. In addition to the small crowd, there were a dozen or so car crew members, including Dino's support team. Big Al was there too, along with his big-ass truck. A black leather bra was covering its huge chrome grille. The grille had sustained some minor front-end damage recently, but it was important that the evidence of the damage stayed hidden. Why? Why?
I don't know. It was important. Okay? It was important to him. He just didn't want his truck to look bad. He's very proud of his truck.
Watching all this activity was Monarch himself. The mysterious Maestro was still ensconced in his studio. Its location was as top secret as the De Leon itself. He had a large bank of video monitors in front of him. They were beaming footage from dozens of cameras he had stashed along the racecourse, its exact route unknown to anyone but him. This was Monarch's baby, and he wasn't shy about letting everyone know it. Those in the immediate area were listening to him via a PA system set up at the starting line. Thousands more across the country and around the world were tuned into his show as well. His voice swelled with both pride and audio volume whenever he spoke.
Audio volume, okay. That's a good one.
This is by far the best De Leon I've ever put together, he bragged over the air. This is my David, my Pieta, my soup can, my Sistine Chapel. I'm glad they got that line in there. Good. It's real done. Then came a sudden rumbling sound. To the uninformed, it was a startling noise. The uninformed going to this very secretive, highly exclusive race.
Yep, well, even in higher than CIA Black Ops security, some people sneak through.
To the uninformed, it was a startling noise, way too similar to how an earthquake sounded just before the ground opened up. After all, Mendocino did straddle the San Andreas fault line, but this roar had a more mechanical origin. It was the sound of 5 supercars arriving at the De Leon starting line.
Yep.
They were driving parade style. First in line was the Celine S7 Turbo, driven by a guy named Gooch. Hand-built and made mostly of carbon fiber. It was packing a 427 cubic inch engine capable of kicking 800 horsepower or more. It also came arrayed with many scoops, spoilers, and other design tricks, all to make it as aerodynamic as possible. The McLaren F1 came next, driven by Texas Mike.
Texas
Dark
Mike!
gray and sinister looking. It was actually a production car and not hand-built. It was also incredibly lightweight and incredibly fast.
Is he going to do every single one?
Yeah.
Okay.
No surprises, it boasted a 6.1 liter 12-cylinder turboized engine. This is the last time they get to do this.
It's true.
Like a jet fighter, it had a rear aileron? Is that the word? Okay. Aileron type spoiler that moved automatically depending on its speed. Next came the Bugatti Veyron, driven by the gentleman of the race, a guy named English Paul.
English Paul!
The Veyron looked like the offspring of a Volkswagen that had sex with something from the movie Tron. It had curves where racers had sharp angles. It was round in places where other races were square.
Great.
With its highly polished bronze wheels and diamond-cut glass-like body, it might have been the most glamorous car of the race. The GTA Spano pulled in next to the Bug, driven by a guy named Johnny V. It was the perfect car for De Leon because very little was known about it. It was built in Spain, and its creators had kept its existence top secret from the rest of the racing world until 2008, and even then, only offered a peek. Its engine was V10 that kicked 820 horsepower, and its body was made of carbon fiber, titanium, and Kevlar, the same material used in bulletproof vests. But beyond that, it was the phantom of the field. Then came Dino's Lambo Elemento. It was a very cool car. V10 engine, sexy Italian shape, weighing barely 2,000 pounds. It was one of only a handful ever built. But cool car didn't automatically mean cool driver. Just the opposite in this case.
Great.
Narrative burn! Narrative burn!
The coldest burn.
Let's go back to talking about the Tron sex.
I like that he explicitly, like, he didn't say, looked like a combination or the offspring of, no, looked like a car had had sex with a Tron. Was it its first sex?
Up at the sexing spot. Okay.
Johnny
Dino
V
been
is secretive about his rides.
Dino might have been a rock star at the Mount Kisco Drive-In, but here, at the very soul of the street racing universe, he was widely considered to be an asshole.
I mean, you gotta have your heels, right?
I guess. He's the worst heel. Like, he's got no heat. Like, it's all real cheap. Like, he hits women, he's kind of racist, he's in with the mob, which isn't really even heat.
If he was a wrestler, he'd just be the most boring heel ever. Like, you can't even be bothered to boo him.
He might as well be coming out and, like, insulting the hometown of whatever race he's at.
Yeah. Down with Mount Kisco. Mount Kisco overrated.
His reputation for wrecking guys at Indy while under a caution flag preceded him. Racing was a brutal, sometimes heartless sport, but bouncing a competitor when the yellow was out was considered extremely bad form. Even the fact that he won the De Leon a year before didn't count for much with this crowd. As proof, when he arrived, some boos could be heard over the roar of his Elemento's engine. Isn't this the race where, like, everyone dies?
Yep.
Like,
oh, shit, they're going to describe the charred remains of Johnny V.
the supercars began to maneuver themselves into their assigned slots at the starting line. See, they had to give this away. These are all supercars.
Not hypercars.
Toby's driving a hypercar.
It's true. He does have an unfair advantage there.
Before them stretched a long, winding, hilly course, one that would need a combination of skills to conquer. Speed, of course, would be the number one factor, but steering, strategy, patience, and most of all, guts would also be required. This would not be a closed track. Like all street races, civilian vehicles would most likely be found driving on the course. In all likelihood, a police car or two would probably show up too.
Probably.
In all likelihood, a police car or two would probably show up too.
There is not
Great.
two twos there. There's no way it's a police car 2 would probably show up too.
A police car or two. But
Okay.
it just sounds like it's the weakest, like, in all likelihood, a police car or two would probably show up too.
Maybe
Probably and two.
maybe he thought that by making that sentence weaker, he just would show just how casual the street races were about it.
You could just say something like cops were inevitable. Like, that's a good, like, there you go. Like, that's punchy, it's goofy, but in the right way.
Please, this fall on CBS, Inevitable Cops.
Cops were inevitable. That's gonna be the opening line to my crime novel. Like, of course, like, that's great. Call me Ishmael. Cops were inevitable.
Cops were inevitable. How could they not be?
No, don't ask that. Then you ruin it. That's your awful British version.
Yeah, no,
Just
but
like, cops were inevitable. How could they not be? Starring Hugh Grant.
yeah, yes, no, you're right that it does become. In the Jackson's British version, it becomes some bumbling guy going, well, I guess the cops were inevitable, really. How can they not be? I was just out there, and they were just cops. It's street racing. I'm English Paul.
Where the fuck am I?
I don't know.
Oh, a police car or two would probably show up. Okay.
Probably.
We have our lineup, Monarch bellowed. In the first row, we have English Paul and the Bugatti Veyron and Dino Brewster in his Lamborghini Elemento. Row 2 is the Gooch in his Celine S7 and Texas Mike in his McLaren F1. Third row and lonely is Johnny V in his GTA Spano. We're looking at $7 million in cars and horsepower here, folks. Winner takes all, and the losers walk home.
No, well.
I mean, nobody gets anything because all the cars are dead. But
And they all get arrested.
the sun continued to rise, the air grew warmer, the race was about to start, but Toby was not there. Monarch had noticed. There's still no sign of Toby Marshall, he told his listeners just a minute ago. Maybe this race won't have as much soap opera as we thought. Sitting beside this Lamborghini, Dino smirked on hearing this. Chump, he thought aloud. But Toby was on his way. At that moment, he was flying up the mountains in Koenigsegg, tearing up the asphalt on the rapidly ascending roads. Once he was in earshot, his presence was quickly known. Hold on, Monarch told his listeners. Do I hear a 6 car approaching? I can't really see who, but stand by. When Monarch realized who it was, his voice went up another notch in volume and excitement. My people, he announced. Toby Marshall has just arrived, and he's driving the Koenigsegg Agera. But hold on, my children, do the math for me. Where's the Shelby Mustang? Or do we even care? No, we don't care about a lot of things, Monarch.
It's not wrong. You're not wrong there.
We're like 2 hours into this movie. It's already gone on a half hour too long.
At least.
Toby rolled up to the starting line and let the crowd drink him in. He knew it didn't matter to Monarch or anyone else that he was here in a Koenigsegg and not the Shelby. Just the opposite. It only added to the drama, the soap opera, which is what the De Leon and Monarch's followers thrived on. But when Dino spotted the Koenigsegg, a soap opera was the farthest thing from his mind. He nearly voided himself on his hand-brushed Galero leather seats. Toby was driving the car
Right.
he should have burned a long time ago. Can't talk. Dino knew he'd been found out for sure now, and he knew there was only one person who could have snitched. Anita. He actually said aloud, I had Big Al hit the wrong person. Man.
Whoa.
Toby eased the Koenigsegg into his assigned slot, last row, next to the GTA Spano. He looked down at the Pete 392 tattoo on his arm and felt a kind of tranquility come over him. Finally, all the bullshit was over with. Everything he'd done in the past 2 years, in the past 2 days, had led up to this moment. Despite all the obstacles, the cops, Dino, despite everything, here he was, ready to race. This moment was what it was all about. For his mom, for his dad, for Julia, and most of all, for Pete. He tapped his tattoo twice for good luck and whispered, "Do or die, little brother. This one's for you."
This moment, he owns it.
Then came the words everyone had been waiting for. Monarch bellowed, "It's time, gentlemen!"
To do what? No, that was you.
A portable dragster light grid had been put in place at the starting line. It had 3 yellow lights and 1 green. The racers revved their engines to pull full peak now. The noise was the loudest so far. Suddenly, the lights fell down the grid and the green light exploded in a puff of smoke, which, by the way, was one of my favorite gags in this entire movie.
Yep.
The 6 cars screamed off the starting line. The Bugatti was in first place in an instant, the other 5 cars right behind it, but the race almost ended before it could begin. The 6 supercars came very close to a massive pile-up going into the first turn, which was a hard downhill right. Bunched together, door to door and tail to nose, they all took to the corner like they were running on rails. Watching intently from his remote video setup, Monarch began barking like an announcer at the Indy 500. "English Paul and the Bugatti has taken the whole shot," he yelled into his mic. With Dino Brewster holding a tight second. Then we have Gooch, Celine, Texas Mike's McLaren, and Johnny V in the Spano. Bringing up the rear is little old Toby Marshall. If the kid from Mount Kisco plans on winning this race, he better get his ass in gear. Hitting 120 miles per hour already. The cars were so close together, some of their mirrors were scraping each other. The noise, the fire, the smoke, it was all mind-blowing. Exploding out into a straightaway, Toby was shifting like a madman. His speedometer was climbing by the second. 125, 145, 175. As much as he loved the Shelby Mustang, the Koenigsegg was frighteningly powerful. The adrenaline rush was incredible. As the road rose ahead of him, Toby shuttled in and started thinking strategy. He studied his nearest opponent, the GTA Spano, off to his right just a few inches ahead. It was still early in the race, but he decided to make a move. He hit the gas and swerved right at the Spano. The sudden maneuver stunned Johnny V. He overreacted, sending him a wide right and causing 2 of his wheels to go off the pavement. Monarch saw the move and became very excited. "Toby Marshall and Johnny V are already battling for 5th, he yelled. Toby's actually exchanging paint with the Spano. And wait, Johnny V's off the road. Toby watched the GTA go sideways behind him. He didn't have time to think about it. He hit the gas again. "Okay, Johnny V has recovered," Monarch reported. "But Toby's already moved up a notch. He's taken over 5th place." The racers were climbing a hill now, with each driver with the gas pedal mashed, each waiting and wondering where the road went from here. But suddenly, a police helicopter appeared over the racecourse. It came out of the trees and was looking down on the supercars.
At least once every 5th pages there has been a "but suddenly."
I know. Also, I feel like every pedal has been stomped, mashed, put upon, crushed, smashed.
Well,
every word you could think of.
To be fair, there is a lot of pedal shots in this movie. You kind of run out eventually.
Monarch was incensed. "Flying cops," he shouted, "like flies in my ointment, my children. The California Highway Patrol is in the air over our course." The police helicopter was a Bell 412 and a powerful, agile machine. Nose down, it was flying at full tilt just 20 feet off the ground. It was almost as if it was signaling the racers that they'd been found out. Almost.
Almost. Except that's exactly what it's doing. That's what... Almost.
Almost. Monarch picked up a paperweight and hurled it against the wall of his secret studio. "Someone snitched," he bellowed. "Someone spilled the beans to the fuzz. They might have been thinking they were doing some good, but take it from me, you add cops to this race, and people will get hurt." There was nothing the racers could do about the helicopter but keep going. They roared underneath the aircraft, all in a serpentine line, and at tremendous speed flew over the crest of the hill. But the copter immediately climbed, did a smooth 180-degree turn, and took off after the racers. Monarch was still supremely pissed. "Race should race," he yelled into his microphone, "and cops should eat donuts. This has just become a death race." That's a different movie. With
I
the GTA
swear
Spano,
that line happened before, and you made that joke already. I'm 100% they have said "become a death race" already.
Really?
Yeah, I remember that.
We are closing this out, so that makes sense. You know, you come back to what you started with. That's how writing works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a perfect example of how to do the writing.
With the GTA Spano no longer beside him, Toby was able to take over the middle of the road. He was now directly behind the McLaren and the Celine S7, but as soon as he settled behind them, 2 police cars appeared up ahead, traveling side by side, lights flashing, sirens wailing. They were coming from opposite direction, heading right at the racers. Toby knew this was more than just an ordinary race for him. Of them all, he had the most to lose if the cops stopped the De Leon and apprehended the drivers.
No! To be fair, Dino will be killed.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
Toby may have the moral high ground in that he didn't kill his friend, but in terms of the most to lose, Dino is... Wow, that makes Toby saving him at the end real dark. Just leaving him to be murdered in prison by the mob.
With this in mind, he became focused like never before. There's a lot of never befores happening too.
Well, it's a, you know, it's a
You
first.
don't have to describe the escalation of like conflict. Like that's inherent. Like underlining it just makes it seem really obvious and ham-fisted.
Well, no one has ever said this book was nuanced.
Sure, I know. But if we're gonna get something out of this, we might as well critique it properly.
True, that's true. I feel like I'm learning a lot about how to write right now.
Oh, here we go. A description of the movie's dumbest thing.
Let's
it was
do this.
almost as if he began seeing everything just a few seconds ahead of time. McLaren and the Celine were in front of him. When he sensed the McLaren might go wide up to set up its next turn, Toby saw another opportunity to make another move. He hit his brakes while going into the turn and began drifting violently between the McLaren and the S7. The object of his desire was the space right between them. Monarch saw the gutsy maneuver and approved. Toby Marshall's going to roll the dice, he yelled. He's trying to split the McLaren and the Celine. Wow, ballsy. Toby successfully squeezed himself between the McLaren and the Celine, but he didn't want to stay there for long. He came up on a curve, still sandwiched together. Then, when it came to the turn, Toby hit the gas a second before Texas Mike did, and suddenly the McLaren was behind him. Just like that, Toby was in 4th place. Marshall's balls have been located, Monarch roared, and they are large. Toby felt good about his move, too. The Celine was right in front of him with the McLaren right behind.
That's like ridiculous compliment, and he's like, "Yeah, I feel pretty good about it." I think it went well.
But the 2 police cars were still heading right at the racers, with a convergence of speed at more than 250 miles an hour, and no one was giving up their position. Hey, look, if you're hitting if a car hits a police car, or 2 cars hit each other, it doesn't matter what the combined speed is, it only matters at what speed the fastest car was traveling. That's how wrecks
Physics
work.
works, yes.
Yeah.
Because the force of 2 things opposite each other, I've been to high school and learned science once.
Yeah.
I always had a lesson.
Suddenly, the race transformed into a massive game of chicken, with the 6 supercars coming from one direction and the 2 speeding police cars coming from another. Luckily, the cops blinked first. At the very last instant, both cruisers jammed on their brakes and skidded to the side of the road. Clouds of burnt rubber filled the air as they tailspun themselves onto the dirt shoulder. The supercars went by them like 6 gunshots, but the cops were not out of it. Both spun their cars around, gained the pavement again, and sirens still screaming began a pursuit. A short distance up the road, an unsuspecting civilian car was traveling in the same direction as the racers. Coming up on it at lightning speed was the Bugatti and Dino's Lamborghini. Dino was trailing off English Paul and trying to time the moment before they both overtook the civilian car, but his indecision got the best of him. He swung out to pass the Bugatti, but acted too late. English Paul matched his speed and then saw, closing the door on Dino, slamming his fist against the steering wheel. Dino was forced back into 2nd place. But then more police interference came into play. The police helicopter appeared again, this time swooping in very low over the tops of the cars before heading further down the race course. Once it was about a half mile in front of them, it suddenly pulled up into a hover. Then its pilot brought its aircraft down very low and went into a crab maneuver, flying sideways just a few feet off the pavement, essentially blocking the road. The cops are trying everything possible to stop my race, Monarch yelled into the microphone. Get that bird out of there. People will die. Let's hope English Paul doesn't back down. The Bugatti was the first racer to come upon the copter, but English Paul showed no signs of slowing down. If anything, he started going faster. The helicopter pilot saw this and panicked. He jerked up on his controls and climbed a few feet just seconds before causing a devastating collision. The Bugatti slid through the narrow space below the copter's landing skids. In rapid order, the other racer safely zoomed underneath the copter as well. The copter's crabbing maneuver had really just been a delaying tactic, a trick to throw off the racers, because yet another police car was waiting up ahead. Its police officer was preparing to throw a spike strip across the road. Any tire hitting it would explode immediately. As the racers were traveling practically bumper to bumper and in excess of 150 miles per hour, such a blowout would cause a catastrophic pileup. The cop threw the spike strip out onto the asphalt nevertheless as the Bugatti was approaching. But again, English Paul was a real pro. Spying a narrow gap between the spikes and the cop who threw them, he expertly threaded the needle, zooming right through the tiny opening and scaring the cop half to death. The rest of the cars followed the Bugatti's line and avoided the strip as well. Another police tactic had been foiled. Throughout all this, Toby was able to maintain a strong position and stay in fourth place. The farmlands of Mendocino were blurring by him now as he roared along at close to 160 miles per hour, accelerating all the time. He hoped the cops would realize the futility of their tactics and just let them be, but no such luck. First one, then two, slowly moving police cars now appeared on the roadway, again heading right at the racers. These two were zigzagging back and forth in what the law enforcement called a rolling roadblock. All the racers saw them and knew timing their way past them would be crucial to preventing another potential disaster. The Bugatti was on them in seconds, and in another display of fantastic driving, English Paul perfectly split the two zigzagging police cars. Dino went right behind him, mimicking the Bugatti's maneuver but coming very close to clipping both police cars in the process. The Saleen S7 came rocketing by next. Gooch expertly moved around the path of the first cruiser in a loud screeching drift that was a success, but the maneuver put the Saleen directly into the path of the second cruiser, which is now blocking its path. Doomed, Gooch had no other choice. He put the slanted front grille of the Saleen right under the second cruiser's fender and launched the cop car as if it were going off a ski jump. The cruiser went completely airborne, spun around, then came crashing to the ground. It skidded for a long time on its side before finally coming to a smoky, dusty halt, the cops inside mightily stunned. The Saleen had taken a fatal blow, though. It's bottomed out and ground to a halt in the shower of sparks and smoke. Monarch came out of his seat. "The Gooch has been taken out," he roared.
No!
He's completely gone. The Saleen is out because of police interference. Luckily, Toby saw the whole thing, again like it was happening in slow motion. He'd watched English Paul start his maneuver, and how Dino followed him through. But then Gooch caught it, rather heroically, but abruptly ending his race. Toby came up on the Saleen's crash just seconds after it happened, and was able to rock it by the mayhem, bursting through the storm of smoke left by Gooch's demise. When he could see daylight again, Toby found himself in third place. "British Paul still holds first," Monarch reported. Dino's still in second, but
Okay.
Tony Marshall's moved into third. Down to 5 cars, people. Yes, he said British, not English.
Okay.
That is totally Monarch or the writer fucking that up.
I like to think it's Monarch, but I know better.
Would calling English Paul British Paul be seen as like offensive? I mean, other than just getting the name wrong, but is that, I don't know quite.
No, it'd be offensive.
It's like, I've got English pride, not British pride. Is that a thing? I'm sure that's a thing,
yeah,
right?
for fucking racists.
Sure. We don't know anything about English Paul other than he drives a Bugatti because he can't be
Jesus,
that
you're a member of the BNP. Christ. That's very... yeah. Okay. This has really turned me against English Paul now.
Well, like I said, he's driving an Italian car, so he's probably all right.
Okay, well, I hope so.
Like, what's a British race car?
I don't know. There's a lot there. Driving a Mini. I don't know.
And then he drives it on the ceiling of the sewer system.
Yes.
Because that's how that works. Oh. Okay. Monarch was not only following the action on his video monitors, he was also hacking into the Highway Patrol's communications as they tried to disrupt the race. Most of what he heard was typical smoky stuff, locations and status, with some bitching about how none of their tactics had worked so far. But then he heard something that chilled him right to the bone. In among the static and chatter, someone spoke 3 words: "Deadly force authorized." Monarch thought to himself, are they going to start shooting at us? As if this had not already been deadly force.
250 miles an hour. Deadly
Wrecking
force.
these cars with a spike strip, that's not deadly force. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's, just a spike strip. It's just a spike strip. What are you talking about?
The racers left the rolling hills of coastal Mendocino and entered the famous Redwoods Forest. They were stacked up again, bumper to bumper. There was only a second between the Bugatti in the lead and the GTA bringing up the rear. The police copter was still overhead, but its pilots could no longer see the supercars because of the thick canopy of gigantic trees. But this did not mean the racers would have smooth sailing. Just the opposite. Dino rocketed through... Not Dino. Toby rocketed through the forest, still in third, stuck on Dino's bumper. Suddenly he saw a bus in the lane straight ahead. At the same moment, a fully loaded logging truck appeared, coming at the racers from the other direction. The truck driver saw the racers approaching at 150 miles per hour and blew his horn, but it was way too late. He gave a few feet on the side of the road, and it was enough for English Paul, Dino, and Toby to roar through. But the McLaren, the bus, and the truck all crossed paths at the same time. The McLaren's side mirrors shattered in twin explosions of glass and carbon fiber. That's how closely Texas Mike had to thread the needle between the bus and the truck. The maneuver seemed to last an eternity for him. But then he saw daylight and a long straightaway ahead of him, and he knew he was safely clear. The truck driver had no such luck. His rig jackknifed, the trailer swinging around, unleashing its load of freshly cut trees. Huge logs bounded down the road, one of them sideswiping Johnny V's GTA Spano, causing him to lose control. Then, at the worst possible moment, another police car suddenly appeared on the racetrack. It had been driving behind the logging truck, but an instant after the truck driver skidded, the cruiser crashed head-on into the GTA Spano. Monarch was livid. "The Spano just took a cop car to the face," he yelled into his microphone. "Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Johnny V. The winner's prize is getting smaller because we only have 4 cars left." Its pour went out for poor Johnny V.
I will. I'm glad that Monarch is acknowledging the fact that
Johnny V is fucking dead.
one, that Johnny V is fucking dead. 2, that by all the cars crashing, it kind of makes the race completely worthless and pointless, and no one wins anything. But yes.
To be fair, what are the people watching this? I guess no one's actually watching this. Everyone's just watching the dumb map. So it's not even interesting in, like, I get to see the cars crash way.
No. It's interesting in a how the hell did you get that in prison way.
You notice that's not actually happened in this book yet. We've got 15 pages left.
That's not going to be in the book, because he knows enough about the narrative form of the book to know that you can't do cutaways from the action scene. I mean, you can.
The movie knew enough to know, hey, this is the only guy that's actually funny. We should put him in the movie more.
It's true.
This is the only guy that's funny on purpose. Let's focus on actual facts.
Just reads like, when you put him in the book, you just sound like you're just writing a racist caricature, whereas he can actually, put some personality here. Maybe we'll just do the race. He needs to describe Texas Mike some more. That's all we need.
You're about to get that, right? Texas Mike's still in this race, or is he not?
He is in this race.
Okay. The remaining supercars raced through the strobing redwoods forest. They were rocketing along on a line over the 2-lane blacktop at 180 miles per hour. Again, 2-lane blacktop, another movie, not the one we're talking about. But up ahead, law enforcement had yet another obstacle waiting for them. The first after Monarch had intercepted the Deadly Force authorized message. An empty cruiser had been hidden behind a huge redwood tree. Its engine was turned on and its accelerator was racing madly. The pack of racers, still flying along with just millimeters separating them, were unknowingly heading towards the hidden empty cruiser. English Paul's Bugatti was still in the lead. Just an instant before the pack arrived, a cop standing nearby reached into his cruiser. His Billy Club had been keeping the gas pedal jammed to the floor. Now he put the car's transmission into drive and murderously launched the cruiser right into the path of the oncoming racers.
Murderously!
English Paul almost made it past the driveless cruiser. His car's tremendous speed almost came through. But his back end was clipped by the cruiser's front end, and the Bugatti simply exploded. The momentum from the blast set the car spinning off the road into the forest, where it pinballed off several ancient trees before finally coming to a fiery, smoky halt.
R.I.P. English Paul.
You went out in the coolest way, at least.
It's true. He did pinball as a verb.
Monarch was incensed. Suddenly he knew what deadly force meant.
Great. Good job. Great. Just great. Just well done all around. So all involved, really.
He told his listeners, the Bugatti just got taken out by an empty police car. The cops are playing dirty, and they're playing God. And it's not right, my children. But as so often happens in racing, one driver's tragedy was another driver's opportunity. And so it was for Toby. A moment before the Bugatti got wrecked, Dino had stood on his brakes and gone wide, avoiding becoming entangled in the carnage. It showed some outstanding driving on Dino's part, But it was exactly what Toby had been waiting for. Instead of hitting his brakes and mimicking Dino, Toby stood on his accelerator instead and split the gap between the Elemento and the leftovers of the Bugatti wreck. It all happened in a flash. It was so quick. Toby actually closed his eyes in the last instance of this maneuver. It was that tight and dangerous. But then he opened his eyes again and he was in first place. And Monarch was excited again. "Toby Marshall's running first," he yelled. "The blue-collar kid from Mount Kisco is very close to wearing Cinderella's slipper." An instant later, Toby exited the Redwoods Forest. He was topping 175 miles per hour and heading for the Pacific Coast Highway. Behind him was the McLaren, and behind the McLaren was a very pissed-off Dino. The road split in two here. One direction went straight, and the other went to the left. Toby drifted left at 160 miles per hour, knowing that's where the finish line lay. Texas Mike and Dino did the same thing, but they also spotted 4 police cars coming straight at them before they turned. These police cars joined the others, and now there was an all-out chase on the race course. A half-dozen cruisers were in pursuit of the remaining race cars, but Monarch was on top of it. "Most cop cars top out at 130 max," he told his listeners angrily. "My racers go almost twice that, so good luck catching up, Smokey. We'll let you know who wins." Thousands of people all over the world were following the race via Monarch's broadcast. Benny was one of them.
Great! Great, here we go.
He was in a military jail cell in Nevada, along with the rest of the crew of the Purloined Super Stallion helicopter. They were all charged with misuse of government property, but they had all become great friends by this time, and Benny had made secret racing friends out of all of them.
Secret racing friends are the best friends.
Famous fans, but I like secret racing friends. My misspeak was way better.
Okay. I too prefer secret racing friends.
Their guards had let them listen to Monarch's play-by-play on Benny's iPad, and the cop crew cheering
Boo!
loudly as Benny.
How do you not write? I'm sorry, but how do you not describe the "Hi, can I have your iPad, prison guard"?
I agree. And the copper crew was cheering as loudly as Benny anytime Toby made a move. Joe Peck and Finn were also listening in. They were in the Beast, parked in the hospital lot right outside Julia's hospital room, cheering on their friend while staying close to her because they knew that's what Toby would want them to do. The huge audience also included Julia herself, who, though still in her hospital bed, was recovering at a rapid pace. She was listening to Monarch's broadcast on her laptop, and she was screaming like a banshee at every turn of the race, even more so than the Marshall Motors team. "Come on, Toby," she cried over and over. "Push it! Get there! Push it!" This is where Toby makes the spirit bomb with the prayers of all of humanity.
Yeah, and then, yes, and they all on the. He actually just uses the hopes of all the people who are watching him to power him and save the world.
Like it's either 2 pieces of nos or the prayers of everyone you love.
If it really did turn to a ridiculous anime at this point, it may have been the greatest thing.
I mean, we are describing the end of Speed Racer, for the record.
Oh, I was thinking of the end of the Digimon movie.
Okay.
In which the prayers of... I was like, not metaphorically the prayers of everyone you love. I was talking about literally the prayers of everyone he loves coming to help out.
Okay. Yeah, well, you're describing something else that I'm not going to spoil because we're going to play it at some point.
Or every Final Fantasy game?
No, but anyway.
Okay.
She'd taken to steering the laptop as if it were the wheel of Toby's car. Really? She was leaning right and left with all the curves. She was right there in the car with him.
Again,
Her screams got so loud, they eventually brought the floor nurse hurrying to her room, thinking something was wrong. "Sorry about that," Julia apologized to her. "Just that a friend of mine, or should I say, a very good friend of mine,
Wow.
is in a car race right now, and he's in the lead. It's very exciting."
Great. Just
The nurse looked at her skeptically. "Is it your boyfriend?" she asked. Julia began to answer, but then she stopped herself for a second. "Well, at the moment," she finally replied, "I think he considers me just a little bit more than a good right-seater." The nurse rolled her eyes, checked Julia's monitors, and then turned to go. "Any girl screams like that for a guy," she said over her shoulder. "Honey, you better make sure he's your boyfriend."
I don't even know what that means.
You make him scream. If he can make her scream like that, she better
I get the innuendo, but I meant on a surface level of how does that work? I don't know. I get the joke.
I don't
It's
know.
just not a good joke.
The 3 surviving race cars were now flying down the Pacific Coast Highway. The drivers weren't paying any attention to the beautiful scenery, though. Such things as pounding surf and sparkling ocean tend to get lost at 170 miles per hour.
So we're not going to have a description of that time in the middle of a race Toby looked out the window to admire the view.
Magical Sound Shower started playing over the radio. Toby was still in the lead, and Dino was still in 3rd place, but he'd managed to creep up on the 2nd place McLaren. Suddenly, he was right on Texas Mike's left fender. They went into a hard right-hand corner and actually hit each other. Then they came to a vicious hairpin turn. Toby went through smoothly, but drifting side by side, Dino brutally swerved into the McLaren. Texas Mike lost control, steered too wide outside the line, and went over the embankment. His McLaren began tumbling at more than 110 miles per hour. There was another storm of fire and sparks as the car was quickly demolished. Monarch was right on the crash. Rubbin might be racing, he reported, but Texas Mike just got barbecued. Dino Brewster just flicked him and McLaren into a roll. You know what this means, my children? This race is now definitely personal between the 2 last men standing. I like that he is totally incensed with the cops kill all the race car drivers, but if they kill each other, it's just good drama.
Yeah.
Next year's De Leon is going to be run by nobody because they're all dead. No one will ever run this race again.
How long has the De Leon been running?
I don't know. Doesn't say.
Those stunts beat that score target.
It's ridiculous. Okay, take us through to the final.
We have 10 pages left, so.
Jesus, 10 pages. Okay.
Toby saw the McLaren wreck in his rearview mirror. When the smoke cleared, Dino's Lambo was suddenly just 2 car lengths behind him, and behind Dino were at least 6 police cars in very hot pursuit. Oh, hot pursuit! That's a game.
Name drop. He's just gonna name drop every single game in the next 10 pages.
Toby was most wanted. Our rivals.
Oh, if only. Unfortunately, neither of us wrote this book, and so.
Dino quickly closed the gap on Toby. In seconds, he was at the exact same position he'd been that night he killed Little Pete. Toby had no trouble seeing Dino in his rearview mirror. He could almost reach out and touch him. His rival's face was a mask of pure anger. Dino knew Toby well. Or, Toby knew Dino well. They probably know each other pretty well. But in this instance, it's Toby knew Dino well.
They went to high school together.
He knew his rival was desperate at that moment. For money, for revenge, even to destroy evidence. That meant he was capable of doing anything. As Toby has predicted, an instant later, Dino made his move. He tried to force the Koenigsegg off the road, but Toby had been waiting for the maneuver and countered it immediately, but in a highly unusual way. Instead of hitting the gas and trying to get away, he slammed on his brakes instead, allowing Dino to streak by him. Monarch was confused, and so were thousands of listeners around the globe. Toby Marshall just let Dino by him, Monarch shouted like a madman. Wake up, Toby! Wake up and smell that $2 million Lambo in your pocket!
He's taking his visor off!
My people, my children, it's a 2-man duel to the finish. But no sooner had Dino gone by him than when Toby immediately pulled in behind him. Now he was riding the Lambo's rear bumper. Dino looked in his mirror and quickly realized what Toby was doing. The tables had been turned. Now he was suddenly in the same vulnerable position that Little Pete had found himself in the night he died. In front of Toby's Koenigsegg was just an inch away from Dino's back bumper, even as both cars were going in excess of 190 miles per hour. A towering lighthouse was just up ahead. That was the finish line. It was literally right around the next corner. Literally. Toby gripped the steering wheel as tight as he could and smiled grimly. He finally achieved a long and dark goal. All those days in prison, the solitary weeks and months saying his prayer, doing his push-ups. He is literally turning into Hulk Hogan right now. Just hoping he'd have a chance to be where he was at this exact moment to make Dino feel exactly how Little Pete felt seconds before his death. But now what? He was here. He'd reached his objective. But what did it mean? What should he do next? He whispered, "Pete, if you're with me, I need you to tell me what to do." His RPMs redlined at that moment. He was going flat out at more than 220 miles per hour. Suddenly, Toby cut his car across the back of Dino's draft. This served to slingshot the Koenigsegg along to the other side of the Lambo. Dino saw this and thought he'd died and gone to heaven. He immediately swerved right into Toby's path in a bid to take him out once and for all. And there it was. All those hours and days Toby had spent reliving every racing move he'd ever made. It all came flooding back to him. Pete was speaking to him from on high. Suddenly, Toby knew exactly what to do. He slammed on his brakes again. This forced Dino to slide in front of him and right across the road. The Lambo hit the gravel shoulder at tremendously high speed, and the lack of traction sent it flipping over and over and over. There's an M dash there for that last and over.
Okay, great.
Finally landing on its roof, it slid right up to the edge of the cliff, where it burst into flames. But Monarch could not contain himself. Dino took a swing, he yelled, and he missed because Toby was ready for it. Dino's flipped his Elemento. Dino Brewster is out. Down goes Dino. Down goes Dino. Toby Marshall's the last man standing. He's going to win the De Leon. It was all Toby could do to keep his cool. He'd watched Dino's crash in his rearview mirror. He saw the Lambo catching fire, creating a cloud of thick black smoke almost instantly. He saw the flames begin to devour Dino's car. Monarch Mania! Monarch kept shouting. This is the most insane De Leon ever run. I've had some wrecks in years past, but here, every car but one is gone. This Marshall kid will make a milk run home to victory. But suddenly Toby was feeling very strange. Yes, he'd accomplished his goal and more. Basically, he'd allowed Dino to kill himself. But nothing he'd done in prison had prepared him for this moment. The moment after his supposed triumph.
Great.
Dino was burning to death, just as little Pete burned. And it had been Dino's own fault. His own desperate ego had caused this horrific crash. But what should Toby do now? He suddenly swore at himself in a very loud voice. You didn't figure out everything, you dickhead. Then in less than half a second, he whipped the Koenigsegg around a supercar in a 128-degree turn and headed back to Dino's wreck. Monarch couldn't believe what he was seeing. Wait a moment, he told his followers. What the hell is going on down there? Are my eyes deceiving me? Toby skidded to a stop near the wrecked Lambo and jumped out. Pulling off his jacket, he ran toward the driver's side of the nearly totally engulfed car, hearing Dino's cries for help. Using the jacket for protection, he reached into the flames, grabbed Dino by his leather jacket, and roughly pulled him out of the wreck. Monarch was flabbergasted. Toby, what are you doing to me? He yelled. You're half a mile from the finish. Go to the lighthouse, kid. Go to the lighthouse. Toby dragged his dazed rival about 20 feet from the burning car, pulled him up into a sitting position, and letting him suck in some clean, fresh air. Are you okay? Toby asked him. Are you hurt? Dino just shook his head. I'm okay, he said, just barely able to talk. I'm okay. That's good, Toby said, because Pete says hello. Toby reared back and delivered a massive right cross to Dino's head. He'd never hit anyone so hard before. Inside prisoner out. This is the man who beat a man to death with a doorknob.
I like the way that it is like, I am doing the good thing. I am being the better person. Bam! Pete says hello.
It was so powerful, Dino was slammed face first into the pavement. Then Toby heard something in the distance. Sirens coming on fast. He hustled back to the Koenigsegg just as the police cars arrived on the scene. 2 stopped near where Dino lay. 4 more continued their pursuit of Toby. He jumped back into the Koenigsegg and floored it. He just about literally flew toward the lighthouse. Just about literally.
Okay. Good that we both on that.
The police right on his tail. He breathed in deeply. He knew now was the time to focus on what he did best. That is, driving flawlessly at the speed of light.
Okay, this is just gonna turn into, this is Speed Racer. That's Speed Racer.
He crossed the finish line just moments later. That's all it took. It went by in a flash, but he felt Pete was with him at that moment, sitting right next to him, laughing as usual. He completed his friend's vision after all that had happened. That was the most important thing of all.
That's true.
Toby simply parked the car and waited. The police cars screeched up in back of him, surrounding him with sirens and flashing lights. He put his hands out the window, then opened the door and got out. He lay down on the ground spread eagle to make it easier for the cops to handcuff him. He was beat up, dirty, sweaty, had burns on his hands, and was completely exhausted. And he was under arrest. But there was a smile on his face.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
A short time later, Monarch finished his final broadcast for the De Leon. His voice was cool, calm, and collected, not the usual state of affairs for him. Toby Marshall won the De Leon, he began, and he was rewarded not with $7 million worth of supercars, with police bracelets. Yup, they cuffed him and stuffed him, and Dino Brewster will be staring at a prison cell for many years. Will also be staring at a prison cell for many years. We just learned Dino got implicated in the racing death of Pete Coleman, and also for running some sleazy Ponzi scheme. So Dino, don't drop the soap, pretty boy. Wow, all those cars were wrecked and impounded. The police destroyed my Mona Lisa. Oh, Mona. But I can make a new Mona, and I will. De Leon lives. So next time, my loyal subjects, keep the goddamn motherfucking need, for speed.
Great.
Monarch turned off his microphone and clapped his hands once in satisfaction. He liked being a man of mystery. He really had been an F1 driver years before. He'd run at all the hot tracks around the world and been hugely successful. In fact, he was probably too good at it because he'd actually damaged his heart from taking too many risks and having too many adrenaline rushes. Or at least that's what his doctors told him. Since then, he'd supported at least one team in every major car race around the world, mostly because that's what his old money family had wanted him to do. But secretly, he'd also been supporting his true love, street racing, and he would do anything to see it prosper. That's what his show and the De Leon were all about. He stood up now and walked out from behind his console. His friends the Seagulls were calling madly at that moment. Usually he'd shoo them away. They loved his Lighthouse retreat, but while he was on the air, they could be distracting. But right now, with the show over for a while, they could cry as much as they wanted. He walked out of the studio and out onto the lighthouse balcony. He looked out over the sparkling ocean. It was deep blue and rolling with waves, but not really high ones. I said it was blue and rolling with waves, M-dash, but not really high ones.
That's an important distinction.
Oh, hey, this was not the Pacific. Monarch was looking out over the Atlantic. He leaned against the railings and drank in the warmth of the mid-afternoon sun. Ah, there's nothing like this, he said. Nothing like the great state of Maine. Well, at least we know where he is now.
That's. I can see why they cut that.
Yeah, because that's dumb.
Because the joke is that he just made the finish line of assuming an identical looking lighthouse.
That's great. If I was a mysterious racer man, I would do that too. And then at the top of that lighthouse, I'd just put like a dummy. Like you see like if someone's sitting in the window and you run up the lighthouse stairs and you get there and it's just like a dummy sitting at a desk.
Yep.
And like a sign that says, "You won!" And then like, what happened? Where is he? And then it cuts to credits and next time on Need for Speed, the show.
I do love how he's like, sure is great to be in Maine. It's the most. It's almost as bad as panning down past him to a sign that says Maine. Welcome to Maine. Please drive safe. Please drive safe. Yeah, that's how I would have done it.
Chapter 26. Toby's sentence turned out to be a light one. This time he took a plea bargain and settled for 6 months for Grand Theft Auto. It was not so bad. He'd been assigned to the maximum security wing of the San Francisco area prison.
Not so bad.
Oh, minimum security wing. Sorry, that changes a lot of it. But
Yeah.
still, prison's not so bad. There was no solitary this time. No drama, no prayers, no gang fights. Just a lot of time sitting around and talking to the other convicted auto thieves about all things cars and all things street racing. Just him and Vin Diesel. Like, that should have been how it ends.
Yep.
But he vowed that once he got out this time, he would stay out for good. He was sitting at the table of the visitor's room, as he did every Wednesday at exactly 1 p.m. The doors finally opened, and Julia walked in, as she did every visitor's day, more gorgeous than ever. And like every day when they met, he started off the conversation with 3 simple words: "You look beautiful." As always, Julia melted, but today it only lasted for a moment. Then she was all business. "I talked to Ingram," she said. "He says you still owe him. He wants to have lunch to figure out some arrangement. I think there might be a driving assignment in it for you." "Well, I can do lunch in, let's see, about 150 days, Toby said. "I'll set it up," she replied without missing a beat. "But remember," he told her, "first we gotta go get Benny out of jail in Nevada. They take helicopter theft very seriously out there. He'll be getting sprung around the same time as me. We'll have to set up a rendezvous with the beast." "You realize that's 750 miles from here," Julia told him. "Sounds like we're going to need a fast car," Toby said. "I already got it," she told him with a smile. And just about 150 days later, Toby walked out of the prison. He was greeted at the gate by a roar of a lot of horsepower. Then a true work of art pulled up in front of him. It was a 2015 Mustang GT. Julia rolled down the window. "Get in," she told him, but Toby just shook his head. "No way," he said. "I've seen you drive." A minute later, the Mustang growled to life again. Toby was behind the wheel, hammering the throttle. Julia was in the passenger seat. He performed a great screech by aggressively turning the tires with the foot of his brake, but it sounded like a symphony to him. Then he let the brakes go, and the wheels finally grabbed, and they flew down the desolate road that lined the prison perimeter, headed for the open highway beyond.
That is beautiful. That's really just. Is that it? We're done.
Yep.
Yep. Last line was not Need for Speed. I mean, he got his Need for Speed in at the end there. Monarch did.
Man.
How annoyed must Julia be that every fucking time he sees her, she says, "You're beautiful." Like, yeah, you can think of any other compliment.
Look, for a guy like Toby, beauty means everything.
It's true. He does. I would like to say that at this moment, I just completed Burnout Paradise. Literally, Paradise City just kicked in.
Really?
Yep. Credits are rolling. Credits are rolling.
Oh, that is just, oh my god, it's just happening on the screen.
Steve Uphill and Stephen Roots worked on this game.
We could not have planned this better, dude.
This could,
like, oh my god.
Yep, this has worked out real well. I'm just gonna let these credits roll.
Man. Yeah, okay. We're abnormal mapping. This is Read for Speed. The Need for Speed novelization is now in your hands. The people. Do with it what you will.
Thanks for watching.
Enjoy this playthrough of Burnout Paradise as performed by Jackson Tyler,
Thank you.
my cohort.
That's the one.
Was it a good playthrough? I didn't pay that much attention.
Ah, it's fine. Burnout Paradise is not a hard game.
No, it isn't. We did this for 4 weeks in a row, and that was 3 weeks too many.
Yeah. Were this like a 70-page book of just the best bits?
I had a good time.
I had a good time too.
But let's never do this again.
Join us next week for the novelization. I don't know. For Gears of War novelization.
There are no more video game movies until the World of Warcraft movie.
Oh, that's gonna have a great novelization. But then we'd have to play World of Warcraft.
No,
that'd be
that's not gonna happen.
The world's most boring stream.
So, thanks everybody. You can find this archive. We'll put it up on the site. Check out Abnormal Mapping on iTunes. Rate us, review us. I don't know. We did this spiel already when Jackson made fun of me for doing it.
I will
on the
never
podcast.
not make fun of you for that.
Good. You can find me at LitRock on Twitter. You can find Jackson at Tylea002. That's TYLEA002.
Yep.
This is it. It's over. I need to find new games to stream, but that should be all right.
Texas Mike.
Pour one out for Texas Mike and English Paul, taking it for the man.
Pour one out.